welcome to Gateway Chats, Gateway Unplugged Chats. That's what they're called. Here today with me, I have Pastor Josh. So on Tuesday, we were talking with Allie, and if you missed it, she just shared her story and how her parents helped her develop her relationship with the Lord throughout her childhood, into her teens, and even as a young adult. And today, because we didn't really cover this topic on Sunday morning when we talked about raising kids in a way where they're growing in a relationship with Jesus, as opposed to producing moral kids that just know what is right and wrong, and their behavior shows that, but that's all. It's just behavior. It's just surface level. It's not, doesn't go any deeper than that. So today our topic is actually discipline, which I know can kind of be like a touchy topic, but we want to look at how the root word is actually disciple. And so we want to disciple our kids, and we want to show them how to be a disciple of Jesus. And so I love Josh's perspective, and this is just one facet of discipline. It's not everything. So just take that into consideration as you're listening today. But yeah, Josh, so I would love to hear how you disciple your kids, how you discipline them, because I know that you have some pretty awesome stories.
Yeah. It's been such a fun journey being a parent, and just raising kids with the heart of like, okay, what do I want my kids to leave my home knowing? And I want them to know Jesus and how he talks, right, how he acts. And the biggest thing is I want them just really to know how to love him and how to love people and how to walk that out and live a life, with Jesus. And so a huge part of our language, even when it comes to hearing the Lord or praying or encounters with Jesus or obedience, is really, it's all about bringing it back to what is Jesus doing. Like I want my kids to be so accustomed to hearing his voice and hearing those nudges and responding to them. And really, when it comes to the discipline side of things, the root of that word discipline, being disciple, is really about learning to be formed by love, formed in love. And Jesus said that, like, the heart of the law, right, is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. The heart of the law is love. Right. And so if it's all, if like you're saying, if it's all morality, if it's all rules and we don't do this and we do this and it can get really complicated, and it can get dualistic, and it can be challenging. But if it's all about what is Jesus doing, how is he acting, how is he treating me, what is he saying to me, and so therefore, what am I going to say to my brother when he accidentally hits me in the back of the head with a bat, right? Like, which happens, for boys, happens way more than you think. And so like learning how to manage that. And so that's what we've always been trying to do with when we're discipling our kids, is not, what's right or wrong, or how do I exact the correct amount of punishment to this child, in comparison to the crime. That it's funny, usually the kid who hurts the other kid, it's the one who's been wounded that I spend more time disciplining, because they're the one that has the choice in how they're going to respond to the one who's hurt them. So anyways, I got a really cool story for you about that. A few years back, I think probably 3, I think Bennet might have been 5 or something like that. And Elijah's about 1.5 years younger than him, and so he was just in this biting phase. And if you have ever had toddlers or spent any amount of time with small children, the biting is like, that's their go-to. So he was in this biting phase, and we were trying to just deal with that and try to get him to stop biting. And one day, and I know that Bennet provokes, like older brothers do. And so I'm sure he had a part in this, but Elijah just chomped on his arm, and there was like a really nice solid, imprint of Elijah's teeth. right there, and there was a bruise, and it was red, and Bennett was just screaming because it hurt. And
Right.
and so I immediately, my instinct is like, just go to your room, and then, which is usually is like gives me about 10 to 15 seconds to figure out what I'm going to do. So they go to their room, and Elijah goes to his room, and I go in there, and I sit down on the bed with him, and he's, you know, mad and almost on the verge of tears because he's afraid of what's going to come.
Right.
There's fear. And so, anyways, as I started talking with Elijah to try to find out what was going on, Bennett peeks his head in the door, and I'm like, Bennett, what are you doing? He's like, can I watch? I could not believe it. He wanted to watch whatever judgment was about to come down on Elijah. He wanted to see punishment and judgment come down and justice served because he was wounded, and he wanted to make sure Elijah got what was just. And Holy Spirit in that moment was just like, let's do this another way. There is another way. And so I was like, okay, well then you're going to have to help me with that. So, Bennett, why don't you come on in here? And so what I did was I took Bennett and I put him in the judgment seat, or the judge's seat. And I said, okay, Bennett, since you want to watch this thing go down, I'm going to give you the option of how I'm going to discipline Elijah, how I'm going to disciple Elijah. And I said, there's two options. I'm going to give you two choices, okay? So number one is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bite Elijah's arm, hopefully just the right amount of pressure on there, and hurt him exactly the same amount of hurt and pain that he inflicted on you, and try to balance the scales of justice, okay? So at best, you're both hurt and you're both crying. So that's option number one. I exact pain on Elijah on your behalf, and you're both wounded. But I said, and I could see him start to talk, and I'm like, no, but there's a second option, and here's the second option. Is number one, I want you to think about this. If you were Elijah right now, how would you want me to treat you? How would you want to be treated? And so I said, the second option is you can actually absorb. I didn't use this language necessarily, and I'll just use this communicating, but you can absorb the wound, the cost, the price of exacting judgment. You can absorb that in love, and you can forgive him.
Wow.
And you can forgive him, which means that daddy's not going to bite him. You're waiving that fee, right? That punishment. And so, and I said, but before you answer that, I want you to think about, what would you put yourself in Elijah's shoes? What would you want me to do? And number two, I want you to think about what Jesus is doing right now. And what would Jesus say about a brother that hurts us? What do we do? And so you could see he's sitting there kind of half stewing, half thinking, and half trying to figure out how he can get out of this. And he was like, and see it clicked, and he made the decision. He's like, and I was like a little bit nervous because I didn't want to have to bite Elijah's arm.
No kidding.
And I didn't even know what I was going to do. Chose that, so it was like, I don't know. I didn't have that plan figured out. And so he says, he just perks up and he says, I'm going to forgive him. And I was like, okay, Elijah, Bennet wants to forgive you. And Elijah was sitting there like this, and Bennet goes and he says, I want to forgive him. He goes, and you could see this jubilation just arise in Elijah. He was ready for something. He was ready for a bite or pain or something. And all of a sudden that fear and that anger just turned to jubilation. And he was so excited, and he was like, and so I'm like, okay, so, and then we did the whole apology thing, and and to hug it out, and they were great. And Elijah ran off, but I learned some really big things from this that was actually life-changing for me. And I had just a bit of a longer conversation with Bennet after, but the reality is that Elijah was forgiven, right?
Yeah.
Bennet chose to forgive him. To send, that
Right.
word means to send away. He sent away, or he absorbed the cost of the pain that he endured.
Mm-hmm.
And it occurred to me because, in all honesty, Elijah lived to bite again. Like, he did not learn. We still got through it, and we figured it out, and he
Yeah.
learned that lesson pretty much
Yeah.
when he got a younger brother that was biting him, and he learned that lesson.
Oh, okay.
Which is great. So it just means we just have to keep having kids, or else one of us is going to be in trouble. But the thing the Holy Spirit spoke to me after that situation is that Elijah was the one that was forgiven, and Elijah, he still made mistakes. He still bit again, and we had to deal with it again.
Yeah.
So Elijah was forgiven, but he wasn't transformed.
Right.
But the one who was transformed is Bennet, because he actually had to choose to forgive.
Right.
And the Holy Spirit was like, being forgiven doesn't change you. Learning to participate in love, to participate in forgiveness, learning to, when we forgive, when we're transformed.
Wow.
And that is like a whole nother level of discipline, transformation, heart healing, watching what Jesus is doing. Like, that's a whole nother level that I just didn't even imagine. But Bennet was different after. And he responded to his brothers differently after that.
And he was like, what, 5 years old?
Yeah.
That's incredible to me, like, that a child that young can understand those sorts of concepts, and then actually they're transformed by it. Like, that's incredible. To me, actually, that kind of blows my mind. It's like, what, a child can get that, but they totally can.
They can get love. You can understand love because it's like, when we get into the nitty-gritty of trying to balance the scales of justice and retribution and punishment and all of that, sometimes that can be confusing. Right? Send mixed messages. Okay, Elijah bit Bennet, so I'm going to bite you. Well, then Daddy bit me now, so who bites him? Like he said, it's like, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And he says, but I tell you the truth. I tell you something new. I say, pray for those who hurt you. Forgive your enemies. Forgive those who wound you. And when you do that, you're participating in love. You're reflecting your Father in heaven. And so, whether it's conflict or obedience and walking up the kingdom, praying for people, or believing for things, whatever it is, the goal is just, what is Jesus doing? And I just want to go on an adventure with him. So Jesus is forgiving. Like, Jesus was, when he's on the cross and he's crying out, Father, forgive them, it's not because he's trying to get God to be forgiving. Remember, Jesus only did what he saw the Father doing, and only said what he heard the Father saying. So if Jesus was saying, I forgive you, it's because the Father was saying, I forgive you. And when Jesus was saying, Father, forgive them, it's because the Father was forgiving them. And we know that from 1 Corinthians 5:19. And so this whole system of justice is flipped on its head. The law can be so confusing, but we know God's intent for the law was love. But we missed it because we didn't know what love looked like. But now we see Jesus, and we know what love looks like, because Jesus is love, because God is love. And now we know what it looks like. We know what it looks like to forgive and to send away and to be healed and transformed by forgiveness.
That's so awesome. I love how the focus really is every time, but when you're discipling or disciplining your kids, it's what is Jesus doing right now? Is the question that you ask. That's your go-to question, hey?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, like that's incredible. Just to even, I mean, I feel like I'm receiving revelation as an adult. I'm like, oh, whoa, like this goes beyond like disciplining your kids. It's like just like everyday living for everybody. So,
It, it's so
incredible stuff.
it worked. I mean, it works for all of us, right?
Yeah,
Like we were talking earlier, but the reality is like we're going to go through trials. People are going to wound us.
yeah,
Things are going to happen. And as long as we believe that we somehow have this right to to not forgive, or this right to hold things against people, or this
mm-hmm.
right to respond to people in a way that isn't loving,
Yeah,
we're not participating in the way of Jesus.
yeah,
Right, as soon as we engage that, and every day we have that choice, right?
mm-hmm.
So someone wounds you,
Yeah,
and the reality is that could be done by an accident. Like a lot of
absolutely.
wounds, a lot of stuff happens. Trust me, with my kids, like the majority of the wounds, Elijah
Yeah,
comes screaming to me, Bennett kicked me in the throat, and it's like, oh no, well, did he mean to? And he's like, well, no, it was an accident. It's like, oh, are you okay? He's like, yeah, okay. And that's it. And it's like they just go play, right? It's not like
yeah,
we got, and so the reality is that people will get wounded by accident through life. That's
yeah,
just how it goes.
yeah.
But the person who's wounded has a choice whether to partner with love, partner with
Mm-hmm.
life and
Yeah,
love, or sin. So
right.
the person who accidentally, hurts me
Yeah,
isn't sinning.
yeah,
But the way I choose to respond to them can be sin.
right.
When I'm unwilling to forgive or unwilling to have grace or compassion or lean into relationship or love people, um,
Mm-hmm.
I've left the path of love. I've left the way of
Yeah,
life, the way
yeah,
of Christ, and I have gone down the broad path of death.
right. Yeah. Wow. Can you believe it, Josh? Our time is already up for today. But that was so incredible. That was so deep. And I feel like that's such a tangible tool to walk away with. It's just simply when you're disciplining your kids, when you're discipling them, ask, what is Jesus doing right now?
Mm.
And then really talk that through, walk that through with your kids and lead them in the way of love. I love, Josh, how you're making your kids disciples of Jesus, not disciples of you. You're saying like, come follow me as I follow Jesus, because that's who I'm following, kind of thing, which is super incredible. So yeah, Josh, thank you so much for joining me today. It was super awesome chatting with you. Everyone, thank you for joining us. I hope you guys had a great time, and we will see you next week at our Gateway Unplugged chats. See you later.
Awesome. Bye.